Welcome to Best in Faction,
a podcast about thinking about Warhammer 40k.
I'm Colin.
I'm Mitch.
And I think I'm Lucas now at this point.
Yeah, you're Lucas now.
We keep forgetting to switch to the intro slide.
Yeah, what's great is I think Chris made the new intro and I just didn't upload it. I think that everybody else did their part and Colin did not do his.
Well, baby steps. We'll get there eventually.
Yeah, exactly.
I will miss it. It makes me laugh every time it happens.
Yeah, it does make you laugh every time. I can see them muted while the intro's going, and Chuck chuckles every time the video comes up and has Lucas Orc rather than Chuck Orc on it. I did buy a Best in Faction shirt from our store, which you can get to at bestintabletop.com. And it is the correct orc on the shirt, which would have probably not made me happy.
Yeah, that would have been a little less funny. But
yeah,
now I kind of want that.
Well, I can get you a picture that's just of Lucas's orc and says Chuck with a question mark above it.
Yeah, that's. I'm the not Lucas now instead of
the
not Danny.
I was going to say, we actually need to add another layer to it and have it be the Lucas Orc and have it say Danny, question mark.
And then I wear it. It's perfect.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the meme, right? From where it's the
joke for 4 people.
Yeah. But I was thinking it's the meme like Patrick Stewart saying a quote from Gandalf and then it's at the bottom, it says Harry Potter. It's that meme, right? Mm-hmm. That's what it is. So welcome, everybody. We are super excited to be here, despite the fact that my internet says that it is having a massive problem. Okay. Well, we're excited to be here nonetheless. It's been the morning of technical problems, right, Mitch?
Yeah. I could not hear you guys at all. And then, you turn it off and on again. Works for no reason. So
I'm not convinced. I'm not convinced that you couldn't do the show without hearing us. I feel like if we were just like we did hand signals at you and then you talked for like 15 minutes, I think it'd be...
you definitely, for this episode, you could just hold up like how many fingers for addition, and I'd be like, oh, well, here are my thoughts. I could definitely be like, what do you need? You need a 50-minute, 20-minute, 30-minute block? These are the rants available to you.
Yeah. Please select your topic and rant length.
Here for an argument.
The topic is table size, and the rant length is. Yeah. So welcome everybody. We are ecstatic about 10th edition, and we thought it'd be fun to talk about what we're thinking about 10th edition, and then roll backwards through time. Talk about 9th, talk about 8th, talk about 7th. One of the most hilarious things in the 40k meta space for me is everyone that thinks that the editions are only getting worse. Everybody who thinks that 9 is worse than 8th or 8th is worse than 7th, none of us agree with that take. And so we thought it'd be fun to remind you guys what those editions were actually like.
What awful things we were doing to people at those times.
Yeah,
I think that there is another subgroup of people they had a better time in 8th than they had in 9th, and that I think that some people mistake that for which edition was better, and so I think that bias can sometimes be like, well, 8th was better, 9th is worse.
Yeah,
because, sure. Yeah. Like there was something that happened during 9th edition. I don't know what. Just something traumatic and awful.
COVID.
I mean, yeah, sure, you could name that one. That's one of the things. But no, anyway, seriously, I know I played a lot less in 9th, but that doesn't mean that it was a worse edition. And I think that can be an important distinction for people to make when they're trying to maybe make an informed, just have an informed opinion on that.
Yeah, I think that's super fair. And part of that is like the game is dictated for competitive players by codexes, not by rule set. Like the rule set matters a lot, but what actually builds the meta is what people are taking from what codex. And because the hobby is expensive, a lot of people can't afford to have the number of armies that the three of us have. Actually, Mitch went down just guard or just Space Wolves.
I have Space Wolves, Inquisition, Adeptus Mechanicus, a very small Sisters army, a small Custodes army, and I think that's about it.
Yeah.
And then
So-
like every version of Marines obviously is available.
Yeah, right.
Um,
So Chuck and I and Mitch, we all have a lot of armies to choose from. So if something's not competitive, we can play something else. But there's players who have one or two armies, and if those armies were really powerful in 8th and they were not good in 9th, that can be a smoke screen of which edition is better. So that's an interesting point. And then as we go back through time, we're also going to talk affectionately. No, that's probably not right. We're going to talk about the most gross, game cancerous lists that we possibly that we played.
I'll be affectionate about it. Yeah.
As we go back through time. Before we do that, I want to remind everybody that this afternoon at 4:00 is Best in Faction: The Next Generation. They're doing a sportsmanship episode, which I'm really excited to hear. We've done it before, but we're twice their age, and so we have had a different experience.
I hate that that's literally true.
You and I think, are literally. I'm almost exactly 2 Tyler Bortels old.
Yeah.
I think you are, Chuck, because
Yeah.
you're slightly older than I am. And I think Mitch is like 1.7 Tyler Bortels. So yeah, we're 1.8 maybe. So yeah, we are. So I'm really excited to hear that because they've been doing just fire. They've just doing incredible content. Their deep dives into Votan and into GSC were just incredibly interesting. So you can find those at the Best in Table podcast or Best in Table the YouTube. You can find those either place.
They've certainly taken my favorite podcast. They're the one I check first before I go looking through the rest. It's like, do they have something? Okay, no.
Yeah, and the way that they did that is by taking the format of this show and putting production value on it, which I think is
Also, youth and talent.
Yeah.
Oh yes, youth and talent. That's very true.
That's really that really does help a lot.
Speaking of edition changes, though.
Yeah, right.
Exactly.
I remember when I could remember all of the rules, so that's been a disadvantage to me as I play the game.
Handy. Yeah.
Yeah. So they're going to do that, and then on Tuesday morning we of course have This Week in 40K, and that is if you don't know, that's your 1 hour briefing each week on what you need to know about competitive 40K. We cover what's new and then what's winning, and we talk about the biggest tournaments of the weekend. And instead of just reading you the list, we try to talk about why that list is good, what we're surprised about, what we're not, how it plays into the meta. Like as we go on, we're doing less and less tournaments with more and more depth, and we're finding that to be what the audience wants. So we're not doing like 35-person tournaments anymore. It's just there's so many, and frankly, you can win a 35-person tournament with a list that's garbage if you're better than all of your friends. So maybe not garbage, but it doesn't tell you the same things about the meta that the Adepticons do. So that's what we do every Tuesday morning, and I hope that you guys will join us for that. Okay, let's get rolling. Let's talk affectionately about 10th edition, because so far I don't have anything that I'm concerned about. But let's go to Mitch. Mitch, anything you're concerned about for 10th edition?
Oh man, I'm concerned that they don't shorten ranges to reflect the table size.
Yeah.
I hope that they go back to 6x4 just to screw with everyone.
Oh man, that would be such a troll.
You could start a new ocean with the salt that would be generated.
Yeah.
What about all those people that literally cut their battle mats?
I know. No. Seriously, just adjust the ranges down. So, and I understand people are like, well, a bolter should be able to go X far. Well, it's not realistic. Well, this is not a realistic game. That is not what we're doing here. We have to have a certain amount of flexibility in how we envision the reality of the game state for okay, yes, a bolter should, theoretically made sense at 24 inches, but now at 18, we can make it a more useful weapon that has a more dynamic purpose, and as opposed to it having to be the blandest thing in the world, because it's just kind of further. I like that they can, with the new weapon profiles and how they're changing things, that they can kind of take a lot more control of all of those levers, and hopefully they.
Yeah, I think that having everything be multiples of 6 and except when it's not needs to go away. like 90% of the guns in the game are a multiple of 6, and then some of them are like, I shoot 33. Like, why? If you're going to do that, everything should have
Chaos
crazy ranges.
stuff. That's why.
Yeah, everything should have crazy ranges if you're going to have crazy ranges. So, all right, yeah, I think that's a fair thing to worry about. I think that's
if they do that, they should also reduce the size of the table again. Just to troll specifically for Mitch.
I mean,
Right.
if they're that actively targeting me, I'm fine.
What if they moved it? What if they changed it by like a half inch on
fine
each
with
side? So it was 43.5 by 59.5. What if they?
If they actually do interesting things with weapon ranges, then fine. I don't care.
Great.
Also, I'd like to see Blast get reworked. We talked about this on the Discord some, but
Yeah.
I'm not saying that Blast should not exist. I just don't think as it exists right now, it's very much like, oh, you brought things of 15 in a unit. Well, those just died my anti-tank guns that now just pick up, everything. There feels like there's some downside, but it just doesn't balance out and it mitigates hordes just more than they need. It curbs them too hard.
I don't think that a battle cannon needs to be good at killing chaff.
Exactly.
Like, I don't think it does. I don't think that's like
Go ahead.
the alternative of that is that people take armies that don't have big targets to shoot big guns at. And that penalty is hurt by the fact that these heavy tank weapons have blast. But what I would say is that I don't like how much better D3 blast is than D6. Because the gun is balanced to shoot 3 times, not 6 times. And you get that max 3 shots all the time in the game. Like constantly you get that. But then D6 blast, you don't. And then in addition to all of that, there's weapons in the game that are 2D6 blast, which is just like, so my minimum is 3 on these 2 dice.
But if you brought over 10 dudes, I'm just getting 12 shots, and I'm just going to
that's where it gets really weird.
Yeah, that's what I don't like. Anyway, I'd like to see a reworking of that. And then this is kind of a wish list thing, but I'd like to see a distinction between heroic characters and special characters, and I'd like special characters to be able to embed into units. I'd like it to be a customization thing again, like apothecaries and like very specific like units that are clearly there to support something. I'm not
like a wolf guard that you buy and add to a unit and be like, this unit gets this.
Well, or like I use an elite slot to get an apothecary, but I can then attach it. He can join this unit, and they get a benefit for it. And obviously, he's protected. Like he can't be got to. You have to tangle with the wolf guard. I missed that. Like I don't want. I think it should be limited to 1. I don't want Death Stars to come back. But I see them taking away a lot of the codex like levers for players to pull on of like. Well, of different rules, and they're like, okay, well, you're going to only have 1 page of strats and 1 page of this, and that's cool. I just want to still have some intricacies and some cool ways to make my units feel different and get different outputs from them. And so that's a way I kind of miss from 7th edition specifically. Just not more than 1, not more than 1.
I think that's fair. And there's something in the preview from a few days ago about army building that mentions heroic characters versus normal characters, and I think they're saying named versus not named, as I think what they're saying, but we don't know that, right? We don't know that that's what they're doing.
The epic, the chart says epic. Only one of these can be taken, so it's likely. But maybe there are some that they're like, maybe they'll also push some other people into that space, like chapter masters.
I don't think you need 2 chapter masters in an army, which you can currently do, right? You can't do.
There's a rule. Basically, they specifically blocked it off. But this makes it a word rule. You can just be like, these are the things that there's only 1 of special characters, but they can expand on it because they've given it a new title, right?
But today you can take Bobby G to give people rerolls and also take a. No, it doesn't matter. Let's just move on.
Yeah. Well, no, specifically the chapter master, like that keyword, it's just like the Grand Librarian. Najal Stormcaller has the Grand Librarian keyword, so you can't make another librarian Grand Librarian. In that, it's the same thing.
Sure.
With chapter master.
Yeah. Sure. They made a just big intricate web for this one thing.
You're not wrong for not
easier.
Yeah. So I think that's really interesting. What I'm really excited about is I think that the biggest problem with 40K is how hard it is to teach. by far.
Mhm.
I explained this on This Week in 40K. I'm a gateway friend. If I like a thing, I'm going to push the thing on you and get you into the thing. And that's been true my whole life with video games, with Magic the Gathering originally, World of Warcraft when I played it competitively. But I've never done that for 40K. I've brought exactly 0 people into the 40K hobby because I'm not interested in the work or financial push to get somebody to a competitive 40K player. It's too many books. It's too complicated. Making armies is hard. You have to know about erratas and multiple books and how it all fits together. It's just it doesn't make any sense. So it sounds like what they're going to do is a 2-page thing that is all of your codex rules. You'll get a codex later. I don't know how that works. But a 2-page thing that's all of your rules, and then you'll have a data card.
You give them money, and then they give you basically the same rules, but slightly different.
Okay, I'm fine with that. I'll give them money for that.
Been doing that
And
for
then-
years.
And then,
I don't think it's going to change.
yeah. And then a
People talk
unit
about it
card.
Different.
And then a unit card for each unit. And what I love about that is that they can update those cards and let us download them again.
Mm-hmm.
Also, because they can make a new unit and put that card in the box and say, there you go, Space Marines have a new unit without having to go back and reprint codexes.
Mm-hmm.
So I really enjoy that. I think that here's a starter box set that you can play for your army. Here's the rules you need to know. You only need to worry about the data sheets, the data cards for the units that you have, right? You don't need to look at the whole book. You only own these things. Look at those. I think that there's a freedom to that that I don't think necessarily makes the game less strategic and just lets people play it. So I've been playing a lot of Marvel Crisis Protocol because I can play it with significantly less time and effort than scheduling a 40K game. Also because TTS is really good for it. But one of the things about that game is the majority of the rules for the game are on the data card for the superhero. You learn like 10, 12 pages of rules, and then everything else you need to know is on your card. And I think that's great because you just lay the cards out in front of you, and now you have all the information without flipping through a codex.
So I have 3 questions. Well, one, did you guys? Because I completely agree with you, Colin. But did you guys see that 40K was just featured on South Park, the latest episode?
Mm-hmm.
No.
Yes. Kyle is a Sisters player. But it looks like I believe it's Trey Parker. He's been a long-time 40K player. So I would say that we're going to see new people curious about the game that maybe hadn't been before, or maybe are familiar, but like that's just another. Like it's clearly more in the cultural osmosis. We see movie stars and different people talking about it. It's a good thing that they're trying to streamline the onboarding process. I think everyone agrees. That's phenomenal, and I really hope it works. My one concern for them is that they go too far in that process, and I'm not that concerned about it. I don't think that they can write concise enough and slick enough rules to make this happen. But is that they get into too small of a space where they're competing with a lot of the Marvel Crisis protocols and other stuff, where it's like they already have Kill Team, they already have these things. Don't forget that the whole point of 40K is it is the grand game, right?
Yeah.
It's supposed to be a spectacle. Yes, make it play more smoothly. Yes, give me these really nice cards that I can, really have easy familiarity with the rules, and I can teach someone to be like, just follow this. It's showing you what the dice roll is. Here you go. Like, don't make it like I don't want a complicated system for modifiers. I don't want to have to teach someone, it sounds like the psychic phase is gone.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. I like the idea that, that the spells are no different than chaplains or, anything else that's doing some sort of special ability. Let's just make them all special abilities. And you can just, and you can have a few special rules of like, well, if it's a psychic ability, this other psychic thing can interact with it. Like, you just make it and you roll off. It's not that, don't overthink it. So I'm excited for that. I'll let someone else talk now. I was just...
Yeah, I think you're spot on, Mitch. I think that The simplicity doesn't have to come at a lack of strategy. And I think that one of the ways that they're doing that is the stratagems aren't actually being pared down as much as you think, because they're taking the rules and putting them on the flipping guys.
Mhm.
And so, like, if you see the Termagant preview, it says that whenever you move within 9 of them, they get a 6-inch reactive move. That's a great rule for skittering little bugs that you're trying to corner. I think that's extremely flavorful, and that would have been a strat, right? In previous 40K, that is a 1 CP strat. That's what that is.
Now,
And it means that you can use it on multiple units in the same turn, but it doesn't need to be a strat. They can just do that when you move within 9 of them.
They actually said that they wouldn't be. You could use when you use an ability like that, you can't use it again that turn.
Oh, okay.
So if the idea there they talked about was if you have multiple units of Termagants, you're picking which one, and they're hoping this drives variety of units, because then you can get more reactions.
yeah,
So your
getting
armies will be
levers.
more like a lot more one-offs, right? Which I think is a great way to look at that.
Yeah.
I would be interested to see, like, because the next thing we should probably talk about is the return of universal special keywords.
Oh,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Very excited for that.
I'm tingly all over from you just mentioning it, Mitch.
yeah. I'd love to see, like, so they have this like free move away when you move close. What if flamers have like their own lever that they can counter react that, and they still get to hit you as you're going away, because they're flamers, right? Like that's what they should
Right.
be doing. They're sweeping it up. I don't know. I'm excited to see where they're going with it. It's going to be really, really interesting. So I have a question for you guys. What are you doing to prepare yourselves for 10th?
Well, I want to finish talking about 10,
Oh,
and then we
nice.
should talk about that, because I think that will derail us thoroughly. But you're right, and we should talk about that. But let's talk about that in a little bit. I think that the Universal Special Rules allows you to know what a rule does without reading it, and I'm all in on that. Why is Fight Last written differently in different places? Why is Deep Strike written differently in different places? Why is Bodyguard written differently in different places?
Intercept.
Those are Intercept. Those are all rules that should be the same. All of them. You should tell me that a thing deep strikes, and I should know exactly what that means.
I think the Universal Special Rules is actually a piece of something, and we talked about it. I think it's also like lends into the easier armor compositions, all of that stuff. You get to a place where it's easier to talk about your army and tell your opponent what you're doing, right? It gives us a common language. And if I'm like, hey, I'm playing Space Wolves, and I'm using the brigade detachment, and each of those things have a strength, my opponent will, at least from just those 2 words, have a pretty good concept of what my army is doing now, right? Like they understand my overall strategy, and then they can go through and you're like, okay, I'm looking to get these things, and I know that you have access to these things because I see these universal rules and I already know what those mean, so I can learn instantly what you do, as opposed to being like, okay, so what does this do? What does this do?
Right. Also, you only need to read the 2 pages of their rules, and then whichever data cards they brought, and then you know what their things all do.
Yeah.
And I will totally flip through people's data cards while they're playing, like if they'll let me, like, and just look at things and learn as I go. It's just really smart, and there's a nuance. I don't know if you guys noticed from those data cards where a number of things that were silly are fixed, and they're not things I had thought about before. An example is, why is a melee attack and a gun attack different right now? Right? One of them is in close combat, one of them is not. But they are written differently today for no reason. And so on the new data card, there's no strength characteristic for the character. There doesn't need to be, because the only time that came up is when they were in melee. And the idea that anybody went to combat without a knife is mind-blowing to me. So the idea that Space Marines don't have a close combat weapon always, like, it's a knife. They can have a knife. Like, I don't think we send anyone into combat today without a knife. Like, I think a knife is a pretty useful thing to bring with you. But every close combat weapon having its own line on the data sheet is way simpler. And it means that there isn't as much, okay, now we're in close combat and this is the way that works. And I'm all for that. It also means that you don't have, okay, this weapon is +1 strength. I'll go check the character's strength and add 1 to it. Why? We don't do that for guns.
we're not going to argue about whether you multiply the strength or add a strength before you multiply the blah 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 blah. Like that just goes away.
True.
It just says strength 8 on the power fist.
Well, let's also talk about just the practical aspect of these cards, where you can have tokens for counting wounds on them. You can have indicators for I've activated this unit, or I haven't activated them yet. They still have this ability, this token to hand out. Like, it brings a level of structure to the play of game, or like that's going to help people be able to get on board, and that's awesome.
Yeah, I agree. What else from you, Chuck? Mitch and I have done most of the talking.
I'm very excited to see them tackle objective control instead of using objective secured. From what little they've given us, it looks like they've basically said, yes, objective secured was a binary button of on or off, and that wasn't always fun. Here we're using something that gives us some nuanced, these units are better at holding an objective, but it's not this weird binary thing. I'm excited for that. When we're talking about Blast, I brought that up as well. One of the things we don't like about Blast is how binary it is. It's like, okay, well, I'm at 5 guys. This means nothing. Oh, I added a guy to my unit. Now it means something, right? That's I don't know. It's a weird spot, right? To just have these weird cutoffs. They make army creation strange. And so I'm hoping that because they've changed objective control, maybe they will go in and change a lot more of those sort of binaries or cutoffs like that, and make them much more smooth or ramp.
Yeah,
which I think is great.
In Michael's, let me ask you guys a question. In Michael's Outward Realms game, which we all really quite like, he has basic army rules, and he does the data sheet thing, and it is great, the data card thing, and it is awesome. Yeah. But what he does is there's a page of rules that says if you're Oathway, rule. If you're Samhain, rule. And it's literally just, this is the impact of that. And it's not a huge page of things. It's not a custom warlord trait and custom psychic powers. It's just, this is the benefit from being that one. Would you guys like that? If it was more like a quarter of a page of information rather than more than that?
I wouldn't mind if it was, I guess, up to 3 things, but I would like it to be much simpler than it is now, right? Like, if I take Black Legion, I am picking 6 warlord traits to pick from. I pick up 6 relics, and then I pick up, I'm going to guess at about 8 or 9 stratagems, plus 2 special rules for my army, and then character choices. It's a lot in that space, and it means that, kind of going back to what I was saying with communication, my opponent still doesn't know where my army is. They know I get +1 to hit when I shoot at something close. Yeah. But I haven't communicated anything else about what I'm doing. I probably bring Abaddon, because that's like our actual Legion trait, right, is Abaddon. So I think it would be nice if it was more impactful. I completely wishlisty, my preference. I think it'd be great if every one of those sub-factions had a secondary that it had to take. So if you're playing against these people, they are going to be trying to do this. Right? And that gives away a bit of the battle plan. It lets people understand, again, what your army does up front. Which, if you have that clear communication, it shortens the gap between the new player and the experienced player, because an experienced player can look at your list and look at your little details and figure out what you're going to be doing,
right?
But a new player can't,
right?
And I'd like to shrink that gap.
I would like to see, along with that kind of wish listing, I would like to see every army have its own version of Blood Tithe points. For it can be Spirit Stones for Eldar. It can be, it's different objectives per guard. I would like to see some sort of thing that, like, along with like what you're saying, either a secondary or something that forces you to, like, hey, this is the flavor of how this plays, and I'd like it to be able to be different. This kind of leads into the next thing I'm excited about, is that they are going to be doing different army compositions for different factions. They're going to be releasing. And I think that's really cool. I want there to be I want the White Scars player to be able to take more fast attack stuff or whatever it is, right? Like, I want each faction to feel cool, and I want there to be a reason. I want to be enticed to play factions I haven't played before because they have something that no one else has in the game, right?
Yeah. I want to add a little bit, just a little, like, I guess, a nuanced detail in there. If you look at the Termagant datasheet they gave us, it doesn't say battle line on it at all. You could be fairly certain that Termagants are battle line. So what's going to determine battle line is probably going to be your subfaction or something like, or like who your warlord is or something. So there'll be different ways to build. And I think that's a really interesting, right? Like, I love when orc speed freaks are interesting. That leaves some space for, like, if orc bikes are battle line and I can have 6 units of them. Oh my god, I need more bikes. But it's an interesting space.
Yeah, I actually noticed the limit of 6 on transports, and laughed about that because the only army I could think of that cared was Harlequins. We took like 5 raiders, but that's still allowed, right? But no, this 7-8 boats not gonna happen, which I think is kind of funny that this one army's like, we have everybody in a boat. No, you don't.
I think it's nice for them to know that once they've got to 6 of those boats, they can stop.
Yes,
like just as a person.
Venoms as well, right?
Yeah, well, Venoms.
I own like 11 Venoms.
Yeah.
There's a lot of guard players out there with Taurox Primes and Chimeras that are like, oh, like I have 15 of these. Like, come on, man.
Start mounting some weapons on the backs of those.
It's true. What else, guys?
Yeah, sell them to orc players. We'll make them into something.
Orc players don't pay for the bits. They just go around just like in hobby trash cans, just being like, oh, well, that's clearly a tank. Like, they're like, no, that's our expired fire extinguisher.
One of the orc channels I'm in, a guy just posted like, hey, I found this particular model. Here's the serial, or here's the identification for it. It's the same size as a Wreck-A Truck Spig Buggy, just in case you wanted to know. Stuff like that happens a lot in orc channels.
Just like the wild west of modeling orc players. Like,
before we move on to 9th, can I just complain for a moment about the Lions rules?
Sure.
Like, I was so excited about this. I've been a Dark Angels player since I was 15 years old, which for the record is a long ass time ago. And I love my Dark Angels, and I've wondered about him coming back that entire time, and his model is dope. Can we all agree that his model is super cool?
It's pretty rad.
He is sadly worse than Bobby G for more points, and that hurts me at a deep level. Oh, maybe points aren't announced. The rumor I've heard about points, there's nothing to see here. The rumor I've heard about points is more than Bobby G, and he's just not as good. And who knew that carrying the Emperor's Shield was such a waste of time?
Like, I hope it's not heavy.
Is it Imperium Shield or the Emperor's Shield? What's it called?
It's the Emperor's Shield.
The Emperor's Shield.
The Emperor's Shield lets you do mortal wounds sometimes, but not very many. That's what the Emperor's Shield does. Whereas Bobby G literally has additional damage mitigation. Like Bobby G is simply more durable than the Lion, and that upsets me. I don't think that's okay.
Well, to
be fair, it's his iron lung that's more durable than the Lion.
Yeah.
Man, that would make you could smoke as much as you wanted then, right? Like he could just be Bobby J just with a cigar on every model would be.
That's the thing though. He would never want a smoke.
No, he's too clean. It's not on brand.
Okay. Well, anyways, I'm excited by the 20 attacks that the Lion can put into your trash unit. Like that's 22 attacks. Excuse me, shock tactics.
Yeah.
I'm super amused by that, but sadly, I don't understand why he's so expensive and not less durable than Bobby G because he's being forced to carry a crappy shield with him.
Everything. Okay.
Yeah, I think we know everything but his points.
I'm excited to make him into a Thousand Suns Demon Prince. I think he's going to look really good in that role.
I mean, you could just play the model the way it is, right? And be like, well, he's a Dark Angel.
It needs wings. But
no,
fair.
There's a hat for that. He has a hat.
just for that.
Yeah, I think we know.
He's a winged Demon Prince.
I think we have his data sheet. I mean, I think that basically
they've given enough pieces that I feel like we do. Maybe there's one more piece.
I wonder if there's some sort of rules that we're just missing. Because if he had wound gating or anything else, all of a sudden he becomes a lot better.
He's also not transhuman, despite the fact that all the other characters in his army are.
Oh, really? Is he not Inner Circle? Or
He's a monster.
oh, is he?
Yeah,
Do we know that?
I thought we did.
I do not know.
I haven't seen that part in Abaddon's infantry.
Bobby G's a monster too, though.
But that was a long time ago.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, if he's infantry, then he gets transhuman and can go through walls, and I'm a lot more interested in that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then he is very, very interesting.
Still, if he's north of 300 points, I'm still just not sure. But
well, when you look at the rest of the Dark Angel army and what you could buy with those points, I don't even know if he's good. If you could make it like that army is out of control right now. So
yeah. What if you took Ravenwing? That's fine. What if you took Deathwing? That's also fine. What if you took a mixture of the two? Also okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So great.
What if you took anything else? No, stop it. Go.
Nicholas James says, "I've spent too long jogging Bobby G around walls. People are 1.1 inch behind. I'm going to get you." As he runs around those.
He's like strutting furiously. He power walks
Yeah,
like with
like-
the sword.
And the infantry
Peeking
are
into
like,
the windows, like, what's going on in there?
yeah, there's like an assault intercessor unit with him, and they're like, "There's a door right there. We're just going to go through the door. We'll meet you in there, I guess."
He's like, well, I'm pretty tall. I can't do that.
He
too big. I can't
tries
go
and
through the
he
door.
just like gets stuck. He's like, I'm not getting stuck in a hole again.
I've been
It was
working out for
humiliating
thousands
last
of
time.
years. I've been working out for thousands of years, and I am so small that I cannot go through that door. My shoulders are
Yeah.
simply too wide.
I can literally punch a bloodthirster to death, but can't punch through that wall. Nope.
No. No.
To be fair, basically anybody can punch a bloodthirster to death if you read lore. Like it's like a rite of passage to be a named character.
Well, that's lame.
Yeah, it really reflects poorly on bloodthirsters.
Oh man. Okay. So let's now do let's do what we were going to do to prepare for 10th.
Oh yeah.
Chuck, what are you going to do?
I think I'm just gonna keep painting. I have a backlog, and I'll just keep painting up things. Mostly, what I try to do when it's edition time is I try to paint stuff that I love the model, and hope that it can work.
Yeah.
I am definitely going to dig out the Obliterators and my Scorpius and dust those off for my first game of 10th with Colin.
I'm here for that.
You always got to check. to see
Yeah.
if
Are
those
these
good.
still are these good now? Oh no,
No,
sad.
no, okay. We'll
Still
wait
bad.
for another edition. See,
Back in the trash can you live in.
but I do literally
Right.
have to dust those models before we play with them. I don't think it would be very healthy if we played with them the way they are. Other than that, yeah, I mean, I'll follow the rules and get excited, but I'm just going to be excited because I personally don't feel like without a full set of the rules, I don't want to get into a place where I'm worried because then I'm just bringing anxiety to myself for no reason. I
Yep.
just want to look at it and be like, oh wow, and dream of all the cool shit that can happen, and then I don't know, schedule some sort of party weekend
Yep.
thing to like, okay, we've got them. Let's
Just
do this.
presume that's happening.
Yeah, like
I mean,
Yeah, we'll probably do a good 3-4 day,
Yeah.
have people drop in and out and do extensive testing, especially if the
Charity
rules are that
hammer
straightforward.
notes.
What,
Yeah.
Mitch?
It'll be basically another charity hammer.
yeah, it's a little bit.
Well, we did actually push Charity Hammer to September.
Yeah.
And a big part of why we did that was the travel schedule for the people that come to Charity Hammer who are going to things like ATC and WTC. But the other reason that we did it is to make sure we have 10th, just
Yeah.
to be flippant positive, because I did not want to risk having to play 9th at Charity Hammer with 10th like 2 weeks away. Like that
Yeah,
would have
Could you
been
imagine us having?
Yeah.
Well, if we had the rules, we'd have to be like, oh, it'd just be a nightmare.
yeah.
For
Yeah.
for the scheduling and for just for the model logistics that go on in the background, yeah, nightmare.
I think by
Yeah,
September
so-
we might have a codex, which could be interesting to have an idea of what that is.
I definitely feel
understand.
like by September we have a codex. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think so.
So that could be,
Space Marines.
yeah, probably. Or maybe
Yeah,
Death
why
Guards
not?
first.
Why not cover 70% of the armies in the game all at once, right?
Yeah, I'm gonna do it.
Yeah. So okay, let's talk now. Let's go.
Action.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mitch. What are you going to do to prepare for 10th?
I am doing a rules cleanse, so I'm not building. I'm not learning any. Like I could learn, like really commit to memory, guard, or I could pull out my AdMech and like try and play that and learn those rules. But I'm just like, nope. just gonna. I'm going to get ready. I want to get a good inventory of everything I still have, and I'm just gonna prepare. It's literally like what we're talking 4 months, less 3.
Do we know?
June
June. It's gonna be June.
could be
Well,
the
that's
beginning,
2
could be
months
the
from
end. Who
now.
knows?
Oh, 2. Yeah. I mean,
Mhm.
I would guess it's the period where they told all the GW employees they aren't allowed to have vacations.
No,
Is that
that's
June?
fine.
Yeah. From
Okay.
That is the rumor that has been going around on I think the Grim Cord.
Okay. That's funny. I don't know what I'll do. I'm in a weird personal place right now where there's a lot of work going into my real life. And I feel like my competency is there for 9th. So we're probably going to go to a team tournament right before 10th comes out, and that'll be great fun. There's a local one in the Pacific Northwest. So we'll probably do that. But I don't think I'll practice a ton. Not because I don't love 40K, I do, but because there's so much else going on, I'd have to kind of put it in to the schedule.
Who's running that team tournament?
What's that?
Who's running that team tournament?
Chase.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Okay, cool.
We have a pecking order group.
5-person teams. It's like the first weekend in June. So yeah, I'm excited about that. And I'll do that for sure. And I'll do the Tacoma 40K tournament, but I think that'll be after 10th. So like I'll
That'll
do
be
some
exciting
events. Yeah, that'll be really great. But I'm just giddy. So here's the sort of person I am. I'm playing an action RPG. Read Diablo for those people that don't know what an action RPG is. There's lots of clones of Diablo. Colin has played all of them. I'm playing a new one called Last Epoch that I haven't played before. And I have 5 characters in it now of varying places throughout the game. Why is that? Why does Colin own so many 40K armies and so many Marvel Crisis Protocol teams?
Because he wants to try the new rule.
Colin needs new things, and he needs them regularly. When I invite Chuck over to play 3 games of 40K, I play 3 different lists. Like that, 3 different army, often multiple codexes. I'll be like, "Hey, Sisters of Battle done. Now I'm going to play Eldar," and that is a big part of how I that's a big part of how I enjoy a hobby, is to see all the different variety, and a big part of how I personally build that matrix of how to play is flailing at different things. Right? Oh, I'm playing against Space Marines. I've played a bunch of different Space Marine armies, so I have a general context of what's happening. It's helpful for me. So what I will be doing is organizing the game space and getting all my armies together and fixing things that are broken, because I have lots of units where it's like, oh, this guy's arm broke off. I'll just put him on the shelf.
Why would you have any damaged models or terrain? I don't understand. Like, why? Why would you take care of your things, Colin? Take better care.
That's a good question. And the reason for that, Mitch, is that because I put the thing on the shelf and my brain says, "Great, that's done," and then moves on with my life.
Well, no, I'm more referring to the events you create that have a bunch of other people handling that stuff, and so something gets broken, and then it gets
and like my Boldrin that are just gone, and nobody knows where they are, which is really sad because I painted them myself. Okay, that was a big deal at the time. Anywho, so I will be getting armies ready, and I will play a lot of different stuff the weekend that it comes out. I am over the Eldar Codex. I'm tired of it. I'm ready for new Eldar rules, which is always the thing where I start. I love my Drukhari army. I don't like the current Drukhari Codex anymore. I'm excited for that to have new rules. I don't like how powerful Dark Angels are. I don't like how powerful Guard is. Like, there's a lot of armies I own that I'm ready. My body is ready for a reset. So that'll be really great. And also, you never know, like Kim, our buddy Kim down in Oregon, wonderful, amazing painter, painted my avatar for me, and I've played with him one time. Mm-hmm. Like even if the avatar is not good, I can at least justify playing him on the first few weekends and still say that I'm testing competitive lists. Like, I can still do that. So yeah. Okay. That's 10th. Let's roll back to 9th. Now, as we go back through these, we're going to talk about the general things about that edition, and then what lists we played that were the most gross. and we might have special mention for other people's growth lists. So ninth has been the core rules. I'll start my thoughts and then you guys do yours. Let's do kind of a high level thoughts about ninth. I think ninth is the best edition so far. I think that they simplified a lot of stuff that they needed to. They made all 5 rounds matter. We were playing 6 rounds before, and many of the rounds were not mattering. Now all 5 rounds matter. I think that's great, unless you get tabled, which is always going to happen in 40K. I appreciated the commitment to data sheets and changing the game. And I think for me, the worst thing about ninth was codex creep. And not just for power, but for complexity. They should be ashamed of the AdMech Codex. Like, that book is so unnecessarily complicated that I'm confident that even when I played against Richard Siegler that he made rules mistakes. Like, I'm confident that everyone is making mistakes with the AdMech rules. They might not be, but I can't understand them without reading the book 5 or 6 times. So I think as they released the codexes, they lost their way a little bit. But the core rules that were in ninth for me were a big win and were sped up and made more efficient and made clearer than they had been in eighth. The final thing I'll say about that, and then they also made it less models, which I think was a great decision. They brought the scale down a little bit, not a ton. I don't want the scale down a ton. They brought it down a little bit, which I thought was great. But the big thing about ninth is these ridiculously crazy codexes. Mm-hmm. Chuck?
Well, I can only echo. I think that the ninth edition itself is their pinnacle of things that they've accomplished. I think that there's a stain on it that is the wildly different power levels of codex releases. There was definitely haves and have-nots, and to very difficult degrees for people, right? I think the other thing that sticks out with me with ninth is I think more and more of the game in ninth was played at the table and less of it during list construction. It's hard for me to tell if that is the game that happened or because the community is changing. We're shifting to a point where what's good is known, right? Like if you tune in Tuesday morning and listen to Colin's show, you will know what the meta lists are. You look at them and you say, which one of those fits me? Mm-hmm. Copy it and go. And that's the right answer. I used to, like a long time ago, I used to come up with lists on my own because those were probably better lists than most of them I could find available out there. And that's not the way of things anymore.
Right.
So it's more at the table, and it's hard for me to tell if that's the addition or if that's just growth for the community.
I would say it doesn't have to be something you like. You can go and find good lists. Like list craftsmanship is now. It's something. It's something just like how some people have armies painted for them. You can farm that out now. You don't have to.
You can. It used to be required.
Yes, that's what I was getting at. Is like it used to be the only people you were competing with were other people who could construct really good lists. But now everyone can bring the floor. Hey, everyone's favorite metaphor. The floor has risen.
I think the other part of that though is that if you look at trading, we talk about trading a lot. In a trading game, it's very much decisions you make at the table. You made decisions in your list that would allow you to do a trading game, but once you get to the table, you're saying, okay, I'm going to do this. That will get me what I want for the least possible losses of my army. And that means a lot more of the game is happening in the game. And it's less like we're going to get to talking about like a Death Star where it's like, oh, I don't have to make choices. Run! I've already obliterated you by the way that I've built my army. Here we go. I'm just proving it.
Yep.
Right? It's less of that. I'm just proving that the army I built is good, and more of I'm proving that I know how to make good choices at the table. And I think that's significant for a game. I think it's a lot more fun that way.
Mitch, you're up.
So ninth, I really enjoyed the way that they played with the structure of the game is actually probably my favorite thing about it, that they changed the CP, they changed detachments. They, like I really enjoy, and I hope that they continue to do that to like experiment with army construction options. Get like my brain wants new problems to solve. Give me new things to do, right? Just like Colin, like I want that. I want Space Wolf armies to be constructed differently to Dark Angels armies, which are constructed differently to Iron Hands or whoever. Right? Like those three armies should look way different and play way different. But at the same time, I don't want it to take like 5 books to make that happen.
Right. And they also, Mitch, they need to get rid of doctrines. I didn't realize this till you were talking just now, and I did the typical neurodivergent brain thing, and I went on 4 tangents and got myself to doctrines. But I mean, in my brain, it's completely related to what Mitch was saying. That's the joke I'm making. So doctrines are terrible because anytime you make a rule, I actually call this the corpse explosion rule for those that are old school gamers, because in Diablo 2, corpse explosion went nerfed and buffed back and forth between wildly unacceptably broken and useless. And anytime you have a rule that can't be in between, you've written a rule wrong. So the deal here is when they left it with the way it wasn't good enough. And then they changed it just now to you can stay in a doctrine, and now it's wildly not okay. And it's making Dark Angels ridiculous, and it's making Iron Hands ridiculous, and Space Wolves are like, it's a big thing. I don't think that rule is good because they haven't figured out a way to balance it. And I think that they need to learn from that. If you can't balance a rule, you need a different rule.
Yeah.
The
final... Go ahead,
Mitch. My biggest complaint about 9th is their inability to solve the I am 1 inch away from the wall issue.
Sure.
Like they tried, they failed. I still get questions about that. People are still confused. It still gets played different ways, different places. It's just a failure of terrain design, period.
Yeah, and just let the people be in the wall. I understand that that's hard to model, but like, they're fighting through windows and stuff. Like, it's not unheard
abstraction.
of. Yeah,
I think
it's not. And especially if you've got 7 foot tall people that are really strong, there's a lot of walls that they're just going to go through.
Yeah, we've hit on a couple. One other feature that I hadn't just thought about with 9th is the support. Getting the regular new mission releases, getting the updates, the game being alive and living and changing as we go, and trying to narrow the gap of the win percentages and stuff really makes a big deal. If you don't like the way the game is, just wait 3 months and you'll probably be all right.
Yeah,
that's probably a tournament or 2 before I'm off to something that's hopefully better. Right. That makes it feel a lot better. I enjoy that a lot.
Yeah. And that if something was not okay, like, that at some point they would address it. Right? There's nothing that's been wildly broken that we've been forced. In early 9th we were, but more recently they've been really good about, yes, we understand that Tyranids are too good. We're going to continually try to nerf them without removing them from the game. And that wasn't good enough because Tyranids just kept being the best army, but they were trying without just dumpstering them until the end where they're done and they're just like, fine, dumpstered.
That third nerf really did it.
Yeah, fine, dumpstered.
Hey guys, they patented the GW triple nerf for a reason.
Yeah,
and man, they mean it. The third one always, it's a guillotine.
Yeah.
Well, I think you get to the point that Colin was talking about earlier, where you realize like we can't balance these anymore. We've made something that's difficult to balance, and it's better for it to suck than for it to be dominant.
It needs to live at the bottom, not at the top.
Yep, that's right. There is one thing I would mention about 9th before we talk about armies. They simplified the game and made it faster and easier to play, and we didn't change round length at tournaments.
Yep.
This is a thing I've been thinking about this week. It's come up to my brain multiple times. We played 3-hour rounds in 8th. Did you play 3-hour rounds in 7th?
I think sometimes there were 2.5, but they rarely went to time a lot.
Yeah.
Okay.
2.5.
So 8th went to time more often than 9th, in my opinion. Certainly, I myself have had a lot less problems in 9th with going to time. I have a lot more free time in 9th than I did in 8th at a tournament, because if you are winning, the game goes very quick. But yet, we still have to have 3-hour rounds. And I think that having shorter rounds would be much better for the game.
Over time, the game's length in 9th, or like the games that are going to length that I've seen as a TO, have increased as the complexity has increased. So I think that it's really a lot of rules, kind of bloat and power creep has created these dynamics where it can really become The other thing I would say is no matter what amount of time you give people, there are always going to be people who are going to play to that amount of time, period.
Well, there's
Because
certainly people that if I get into a game with, we're going to time
Yeah.
because it's the two of us. It has nothing to do with the game, right?
Yeah,
Like we're
that's
just going to be
also a thing.
distracted.
Fred's got a great point, guys. He said, "I wonder if time is a product of when hordes are doing well or not," and that's certainly a part of it.
It's a big part of it. I think also close combat.
Mm-hmm.
It takes longer to resolve close combat than it does to resolve shooting.
Yeah,
There's things like that definitely that all come part of it.
And like you can have a lower model count army. Like when I would play the Dread Knight Dance Party, there were still games that went to time because it was really tight, and the other person still had more models. It just can happen.
yeah. I just think that the tournament day, especially that some big tournaments are trying to do 4 in a day.
Ooh,
I think the
love
tournament day needs the rounds to go down to 2.5, and that needs to include 15 minutes of us messing around before the game gets started.
Mhm.
So, no, I was going to make another option, but I don't like it. So
I would love to see it be. I'd love to do everything they can to reduce the pre-game stuff you have to do. I'd like to be able to have an army sheet that from GW where I print it off and it has all the information I need to give to my opponent. I hand it to my opponent when I show up. They're able to look at that. I answer any questions. They hand me theirs. We review at the same time. We're done. Right? Like,
What if the industry standard army printout was it all legible? That would probably cut a lot of time down.
no idea what you're talking about. It's not possible.
Well, I don't know if you've seen what Battle Scribe armies
not
look
possible.
like.
Not possible. No, everything should look like it was just spit out of a printer in the 80s.
Yeah, I have so much trouble dissecting that, which means my opponent has to tell me what their army does.
Yep.
Which there goes some time.
Yep.
I summarize lists every week, and I'm really getting very good at it, but I still get held up where I'll be like, wait, how many dwarves are in this dwarf unit? and there's acolytes, right? Where you've got these two guys have this weapon and these two guys have this weapon and there's no number that just says this is how many people are in the unit. So you're having to add the numbers together it's like, what is even happening here? By the way, I heard a 10th rumor that unit size is going to go down. Did you guys hear that rumor?
I've heard that rumor.
I wouldn't be
Like that
surprised.
Marine units might be like 3 dudes.
Oh, ooh.
Well, there's
Man.
some Marine units that are 3 dudes, right? Like
Yeah.
aggressors or whatnot.
Yeah.
There are.
But
So
I
anyways.
don't know. Oof. I don't make Fenrisian wolf units smaller. They are 15. They are perfect.
You can tell that they're perfect
alone.
because no one plays with them.
I do. In my brain.
In your brain, yeah,
Yeah.
at night, like what's that movie, the TV show, The Queen's Gambit? You
Yeah.
can see the.
Look at the wolves on the ceiling.
Yeah.
God, by the way, if you
Hero
guys
of our
haven't seen that,
heretics.
if you're a competitive 40K player and you haven't watched that, you're missing out. Like,
Yeah,
it
get in
is
there.
wonderful. First of all, it's well written, it's well acted, like everything is great about it. But the fact that you've played a competitive tabletop game certainly
Yep.
is addressed in that show.
There was a lot of me being like, "Oh, Michelle, my wife, look, this is what I do. This is what this is." And she's like, "Really? How do you do that?" Like,
Yeah. Stephanie and I
also-
had the same conversations.
Yeah, if you watch it and you relate to it a lot, and you might be on the spectrum.
Yeah.
Just,
if you play 40K, you're on to some degree.
yeah,
Yeah,
probably.
right.
Something got you.
Yeah, that's right. So, okay. Now let's each talk about the list or two that we played in 9th that was the most gross, and then we'll all talk about the big ones that were gross that we didn't play. Who wants to go first?
I'll Dread Knight Dance Party.
Yeah.
Okay.
Run us
Yeah.
through what's in there. Not to the specifics, but like the pieces.
3 Telemons, of course, that heroically intervene because they have a captain with a big old aura. And then the best version of it, I believe I was running 2 Grandmasters in Dread Knights, and then 3 Dread Knights, and then some Scions that for scoring,
Yep.
to taste.
So, why was that gross? Summarized.
It was just a whole. Well, it had a lot of surprising mobility, and obviously
Mhm.
Telemons back then. They just like walked at you and were like, "What's up?"
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just like I had entire armies that would try and kill the Telemon, and the Telemon would have like 3 wounds left, and I'd be like, "Yeah, I'm fine. This is I go punch you now." Oh,
then you-
I still hit on 3s or whatever. Great.
And you use that mobility to kill the thing that could finish the job, and you're just like, okay, like your army that army became invincible very quickly into
Yeah.
some matchups.
And it had a lot of guns that
Yeah.
people didn't realize. So many
there's a
guns.
surprising amount.
Well,
Yeah,
and then the Dread Knights were putting out a horrendous amount of mortal wounds.
Yeah.
and teleporting around, so it's very hard for you to hide. So and they have lots and lots of shots, and so they just immediately kill the chaff and then mortal wound, or mortal wound and shoot the chaff down. It was so much fun to play. And then the Scions are actually pretty good at killing stuff too. When they come down, they'll first rank fire, second rank fire. They can actually do some damage. So
Yeah. it's
especially
fun.
for playing against Chaos, because the Cadia, man, it's a big deal.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've heard, but
Yeah,
Real mad
yeah,
about it.
Very
Love-
mad about it.
had one of the best games I ever, or two of the best games I ever had with Noah Badome, playing that list. I beat him the first time, and then I played against him in like a month later, and he had the same list, but he'd made changes for my list in mind. I'm like, well, I'm not going to beat you now. and so barely lost to him, but like both of those games were just phenomenal, and great memories of that list. It was a beat stick list that also made people laugh and was fun and not too complicated for people.
Yeah. All right, Chuck, you're up.
I don't think I was very good at Knights.
Okay.
I don't have very much that like really hammered home. I think some of the best placements I've had were with Thousand Suns, and then also with Zeech. Let's talk about Zeech first. This is when I was playing 3 Soul Grinders, 15 Flamers, and Accoutrement, and Abaddon, and Bellicor. And this is actually similar to what Mitch was talking about, right? Was it just like I was so fast and so durable, I reached a point where my opponent could no longer actually effectively change my army state, right? So then I knew I could grind them out. You combine that with the fact that I had relatively decent secondaries, and it's like, this is great.
Yeah.
Even that was just like, I did well, like some foreign ones and stuff like that. Like it was good. The Thousand Suns, prior to Flamers being just in around, was really interesting to play because it is so technical and so it had so many options. It's similar to the AdMech, right? Where it's like, did I ever play this army completely correctly? Probably not. I probably missed stuff every game I played. But it had so many outs that it really played to, like, I'm strongest in that like turns 3, 4, and 5 when you're sort of improvising, and it gave me so many improvisational tools that I really enjoyed it, and it also did well.
Yeah.
But they've certainly taken it. They've fallen.
Right. So when Ninth came out, I played White Scars, and they were wildly not okay because nobody had the way to deal with ridiculously fast-moving, durable, hard-hitting infantry. And so you would just hide behind walls, and then on turn 3, your whole army would charge at their whole army, and they would die. I also played the Dimachron list, which I think was early Ninth with the 2 big Dimachrons going 100 miles an hour at you while Hive Guard shot you.
You played
basically.
so many games of me trying to survive the Dimachrons that when I eventually got to the point where I could get the sisters to survive the Dimachrons, we're like, okay, but like, how do I win the game now?
Right. Yeah. I didn't lose a game with that army, which is a funny thing, until it kind of went away. I also played Drukhari at launch. I've played the most broken things because that's how I am.
Yeah.
I played Drukhari at launch entirely too fast is what I would say about Drukhari. Just a lot of the times I pick an army based on speed, and speed is another thing that's incredibly hard to balance. So I've played a lot of very fast armies, and that's been a thing. So I liked that Drukhari army a lot. Then I played Ultra Memes, and Ultra Memes just leveled people and did not feel good. It was just the shooting was too efficient. And that was one where John Lennon said, I made this, don't change it. And I'm like, okay. And I played it exactly the way that he wrote it. And then the other thing I played a lot of is Eldar. And when Eldar first came out and you could to the last your fire prisms, That was a really good army because it said, hey, you have to come over here. And I'm faster than you, and I hit really hard. So come on over, and I will pick every fight in every angle as you do. That was really fun. And then I played Ynnari, which was also similarly powerful. The D-cannons are shooting you. The troops are going to run in and kill whatever it is that you are. So I played a bunch of different things that were gross. But the really gross things were not played by us. Tyranids was the most broken for the longest. I think that's fair to say.
Mm-hmm.
Harlequins were broken for a really, really long time. And that cut down on how many people were playing Craft World Eldar. What else? What else was broken through long
Dark
periods?
Eldar.
Yeah. Drukhari was the most powerful army for like a year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
was did its little tour
At the beginning.
Yeah, where Admech's like, hey, what if I tabled you?
Immediately.
Yeah.
Votann was broken prior to release.
Yeah, that's true.
It's a period of time
true.
there where if it had been able to, it would have dominated.
Custodes were broken for a while.
Yeah, and then again.
And then again, yeah.
Custode players have been on a weird ass journey.
Yep.
They've been up it's just a roller coaster.
It's like a heartbeat. Like
yeah.
Yeah, I think they've been up 3 times and down 2 times in 9th edition.
Like just
crazy.
Yeah.
And then Guard, of course, which I think we won't see. I don't think we'll see the true true game cancer, and I should stop using that term because cancer is a terrible thing.
Yep.
The true game toxicity of that list of that book, I don't think we'll fully understand by the time it goes away.
I think a lot of people
it's been a slow burn.
Won't.
What's that?
Like people who would invest to have that to play with it aren't going to.
Yeah, I'm not. I'm just not. Just skip it, pass it.
You're going to spend a bunch of money, put in some hobby time, and then be like, I got a tournament in.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, here we go back. Here we go back in our way back machine.
Oh man,
to 8th edition, and I want to say that I didn't play 40K in 7th, and I was playing Age of Sigmar for 6 months or so, and then 8th edition came out, and I was excited, and so I played 8th edition. So I can't compare the two. We'll ask Chuck and Mitch to do 7th here in a minute. But I do understand that it was a complete rewrite of the game. Like, the rules were entirely different. It was the most drastic change. 9th and 8th are much closer together than 8th and 7th.
Oh,
so 8th was a massive rewrite. So I don't think we need to talk about this is what changed in 8th, because 8th is the framework for what we're playing today.
Yeah.
The turns didn't matter as much. The table was a bit bigger. Command points were a lot more complicated. It started with Index Hammer that people hated. I liked Index Hammer because it was like, look at all these new rules.
Good things about Index Hammer.
Yeah. So that was 8th. What kind of thoughts and memories of 8th before we talk about armies, Chuck?
Well, again, it was a giant change, and to me, the focus moved to the mission, the progressive scoring of primaries, all that stuff. That to me was the biggest thing that changed.
Okay,
it meant that the game was less about the end, because prior to that, we'd been playing sort of the ITC fashion of like kill something every turn, hold more than your opponent every turn, win the game.
Yeah.
Which really led to some strange things. Yeah, like it led to some strange things that we'll get into. We go back, but this changed it, right? Like you could be the biggest, baddest, meanest unit in the whole game, and 10 guardsmen could like run up and be like, "Obsec, I win the game," right? It changed what you had to do, which I think is really important.
Yeah, Mitch.
It completely changed army construction. All of a sudden you had these command points, and now you're trying to fill out detachments, because people forget that in 8th, it was the more detachments you brought, the more command points you got. Right. So totally different than the dynamic in 9th, where you're spending that resource to be able to bring more. So that led to a lot of really wild interactions because they wanted you to bring more, and you could mix and match factions like freely. So it was still a dramatic change from the old ally matrix from 7th.
Yeah.
Which is something special. If anyone who wants to understand 7th edition, just go look up the 7th edition ally matrix.
Yeah.
And understand the factions you could bring together.
Yeah. CP wise, Mitch, do you remember the 32?
Oh yeah.
The Emperor's 32, the 32 guys you have to bring to get the 5 bonus command points or whatever it was from Guard.
More specifically, I remember creating the Infinite CP battery.
Oh yeah, Infinite CP battery. You guys want to talk about 9th being worse than 8th? I see you and raise you a unlimited CP Blood Angels and Guard battery.
Yep.
I also played a number of lists that had 17 Blood Angels in them, 2 Smash Captains and 3x5 Scouts, because that got me CP and screening and the most powerful close combat character in the game.
And the Scouts were pretty good in combat too.
They were.
Well,
I
also like to add a Blood Angels Librarian to taste with the jump pack because he can. He's also a wonderful heat-seeking missile. But we had all that. We had this infinite CP battery where we're ending each game with more CP than we started with. And then we're just like, well, what do we spend all this CP on? And then the Knights Codex comes out. Well, before that, it was like, oh, well, we'll spend it on a Shadow Sword. But then the Knights Codex came out like, well, what if it was spent on a Castellan?
Yeah.
Give it a 3-up invulnerable save and then shoot everything.
And behave at top profile, don't forget.
Oh, yeah.
It's not dead till it's dead. That's the rules.
And it was
so
times.
8th was great. I think though that while I was newer to competitive 40K at the time, so I don't think I saw it as much. I do think the haves and have-nots was actually worse in 8th. I think that we have had a real problem with Codex power creep in 9th, but the things that were good in 8th, when they were good, were unacceptable to a degree that we don't have now. The Guard and Castellan list, there was a Nova where like 8 of the top 12 people had it. Like it was incredibly dominant for a long time. And it wasn't that Guard was dominant or that Knights were dominant. It was that this specific thing was dominant, right? It wasn't like now where the Guard Codex is too good.
And you had the Blood Angels in there too. Oh,
yeah. And the Smash Captains that were in there that were just like, hey, what if I was really fast and my master didn't care if I died?
What if you left 1.5 inches of base area for me to just set down somewhere?
Yeah.
And just
or what
kill anything.
What about when you measured deep strike from true inches, but then you charged in horizontal inches?
Yep.
So you'd be on top of the building and you charge 2 inches into them. Like, you want to talk about a feel bad? So,
well,
I am excited.
Oh, God.
You go ahead.
No, let's not forget the rule of threes. That was something that came around in the middle of 8th edition. Like, so before that, you had 21 Hellhounds. You had what were those little
50 Psychers from
Chaos? The little Chaos Psyker guys. Yeah, those guys. It was like 20 of those dudes just smiting.
The rule of 3, I think, was a big step forward in fixing the game.
I actually think 8th was sort of inoperable prior to it.
It was a different game.
Well, the very first thing that happened was WTC, and somebody played, and like the best list was the Drukhari list that just had the birds.
Yeah.
It just was the birds, and you couldn't deal with it because what are they called? Because their points were
Razor Wings.
Because they were too inexpensive for their durability.
Well,
okay.
The actual thing that got us the rule of 3 was the game designers playing Matt Root when he had the 7 Flyrants or whatever it was.
9.
9. The 9 Flyrants that all start in Deep Strike because there's more Spore Mines out there, and he just took them out in it was like a 40-minute game, and they're like, yeah, we're gonna fix this.
Yeah, these things shoot and punch and psychic, and they can just move fast. And
you don't get to do anything first.
So the first list I played in 9th and 8th was the guard list that was very good, and it was just good because of math. The list that I played that was by far the most broken and by far the worst was what was called Double Spear Ynnari.
Mhm.
There was an LVO. I think it was actually the first LVO that I went to. Maybe the first one Mitch went to. I'm not sure.
I'd been to one
The first.
before.
Okay, so the first LVO that I went to, the top, like in the top 8, there was like 6 Ynnari lists because it was that bad, and they nerfed it, and then I played it, and it was just as bad for the game, and then they nerfed it again, and then I kept playing it, and then they nerfed it a final time by literally changing its entire rule set.
Mhm.
The triple nerf.
Yeah, it's not just the triple
1, 2,
nerf.
3.
The final nerf was a rewrite.
Yeah.
Like, no, this is what Ynnari do now. Oh. So Ynnari had a thing where if an enemy unit died within 9 inches of your unit got to immediately move, charge, fight, or shoot.
I thought it was 7 inches.
Okay, whatever. And there was also a psychic power to do that. So you'd have things like, and you could advance and charge with the Shining Spears. So you'd have a thing where Shining Spears would go out into the table, they would kill a thing, and then they would return back to behind a wall to hang out for next turn. And the Dark Reapers would come out, sometimes shoot twice, and then fire and fade back. And so you had this list that you were just viciously wrecking your opponent, and they could not stop you. They could not interact with you. They couldn't make it to you. Orcs became a problem, and so I had to add a unit of 10 Wraithguard that stood behind a wall with the Drukhari mask. The fight
last.
The fight last mask. Vexilitator. Something Vex mask. And then the orcs would come in, and I'd be like, well, the Wraith Knights are fighting first. You're all dead. So, and then I soul burst forward because I killed you in close combat. Now I get to move my Wraith guard closer to you. Wraith Blades, that's what it was. So that army
to my Ynnari answer.
Yeah, that was before any of the nerfs. You had your Ynnari answer when the first tournament.
That's true.
So I played that army, and I won the first 25 tournament games I played with it, and then lost my 26th game in the final round of Renegade Open on the top table. So that army was the most powerful thing I've played. It was not simple to play, and so we didn't see the dominance that Tyranids and Drukhari saw, and that made it confusing. That was actually the first army where the data was confusing us. That was one of the catalysts that led us to the much more sophisticated look at how armies are doing that we have today. At the time, we only had win percentage, was the only thing people were really looking at. And Ynnari was hurt by how many people were taking it and how good the players were. Ynnari was really hurt by that. So while I believe it was the most powerful thing in all of 8th edition, it didn't get that attention from a lot of people. But the people that did have to play against it were livid.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to learn how to be a good sport while playing something that is the most not okay of everything I've played. So that's my 8th edition list. And Mitch talked a bit about the Castella and Sandy behind guard with Smash Captains littered for taste. What about you, Chuck? You played a few things that were really gross in 8th edition.
I went into hordes. I decided, you know what I want to do this edition? I want to actually sweat every game I play. So I think two hordes worth mentioning. We'll start with Nurgle. Just fill the table with a bunch of plague bearers, and then just do smites from behind it, and do crazy movements. Like between
and play the mission. Play the mission better than anyone else.
Play the mission hard, and if you can sacrifice 2 units of 30 plague bearers to make sure the third unit of 30 plague bearers will last the entire game, plus you have a tree that lets you fall back and charge, and then all the consolidation moves and everything, you will just steal all the objectives from people.
Yep.
And this whole time, you just got Thousand Sun Sorcerers back there being like, oh, by the way, mortals.
Yeah.
Like, that's the whole list.
And I think Jim got second in the ITC that year by only playing that list.
Right. And he didn't play all the way through the year.
Yeah.
He kind of he got other stuff, so he fell off towards the end. I think he probably would have kept it.
Yeah.
It was crazy. It was crazy good list. And the other one, I want to highlight, because we were talking about, factions or detachments giving you more CP the more you go. So playing orcs was fascinating because it was easy to do a brigade and a couple of patrols. Specifically because you wanted to have like this war boss with this upgrade from this sub-faction and so on. So you build out all of this stuff. You end with like 300 models. It's a whole bunch of 30-man orc boy units. It's a whole bunch of 10-man Karat units. Those are all generating you a bunch of CP. Then you get some badass war bosses and a big mech with the craziest custom blanking. The big gun that they get.
Mm-hmm.
That just shot a lottery ticket that
Mega
usually paid
shooter.
off. Yeah, the custom Mega Blaster.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that thing was fantastic, but you could just hide him in the middle of the army and be like, I'm going to pick a target, and that target might disappear every turn.
Yeah.
And it was dirt cheap. But that army, again, played the mission a ton. It pushed
Don't forget about
a lot of
Ludus.
bodies. Oh, yeah. And 15 to 25 Ludus, depending on what they allowed, that you could mob up and shoot. And just, again, between those two things, you pick 2 units you don't like, and you get rid of them.
Mhm.
And then you also spend a little CP to say, hey, you got to shoot Grots instead of shooting the Ludus, and you can't shoot the mech. And here is 120 to 180 boys that you're allowed to shoot at.
I think your finish at Renegade Open with that list is probably your highest finish of any really big tournament.
Like a major, yeah.
Yeah.
Probably.
Could be.
That list treated me really well, but I also played to time, sweated to time every round of every tournament I played in, to the point where like I had gotten a system for putting my models back in place so that I could get them back on the next table fast. Right, like there was a logistics to making that army work, and I'm super glad it was taken away from me.
Yeah, you didn't like it.
No,
You liked winning with it, and you liked that it was orcs, but you complained every night about playing the army, especially because I was playing Ynnari, and I was done like an hour and 15 minutes into each round. So you were used to seeing me just wandering the tournament talking to people while you're exactly. Yeah, exactly. What did we play that we're forgetting? You played guard at the very beginning, just like I did, Mitch, but we were just out mathing people. I don't think there was anything special there.
So there was the all the Hellhounds.
Oh yeah, talk about the Hellhounds.
Yeah, so the list I took to LVO that I almost made it to the like the top eight was 14 Artemia pattern Hellhounds, which at the time did a 6-inch on a 4-up D6 mortal wounds to everything within range, which was a real problem for Ynnari that wanted to come up, punch something, and leave. It'd be like, no, I will get my pound of blood. You're going to lose 2 bikes. So that, and also I always hit you on Overwatch, and this is back when you always Overwatched, not it wasn't a stratagem. So it was a real problem it was a completely like meta-centric list that had infinite CP and the Blood Angels in there for just going and being like, what is my existential threat to my Hellhounds? Go kill it. So I loved that list. Another one that I was really passionate about.
Hold on, I want to mention one thing about that list. That list was as good as it was because people didn't know how to wrap things in combat. It didn't exist. We weren't doing it. We weren't talking about it at the beginning of it.
Wrapping was invented to stop that list by Michael by Michael Snyder and Brandon Grant. They came up with it for that list.
Yeah,
and he beat me with it.
I don't know that they were the first to come up with it, but they certainly in our meta, that was certainly the deal. I don't know if Nanavati was wrapping things with his Ynnari at the top table of LVO that tournament. Like that would not surprise me at all. But the rest of us didn't know about it until we started seeing ridiculously overpowered vehicles that needed to be stopped. So
the other list that I absolutely adored was back when Wolfen had a 3-up invulnerable save and a 5-up feel no pain. And advanced and charged. And I could take Dark Angels with them, so I could have some Talon Masters behind there, and then I get to pick 2 characters and for a CP make them both be just badasses. I miss that list, like all the psychic powers, like just that was so.
What was I playing in that game we played at Terracrux, Mitch, where you had the Hellhounds and the Wolfen, and that was your whole army? Was I playing Ynnari for that?
No, you were.
No,
playing-
that was my guard list with all the
Yep.
super heavies.
It was it was your guard
Double
list.
Shadow Sword, Marauder, Marauder Minotaur, I think is what the
Yeah.
double Basilisk is called.
Yep.
And then 17 Blood Angels list,
Yeah.
basically.
List building was a different thing back then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
By the way, double Shadow Swords and a Marauder Destroyer is a really fantastically fun way to spend a tournament.
Mhm.
So,
So is
yeah.
30 Wolfen.
Yes. It's true. I bet that's true. That was probably the best game, the most entertaining game Mitch and I have ever played was all those super heavies against 30 Wolfen and a whole bunch of Hellhounds running at me. And literally I didn't move with most of my army. Like the plane flew off and shot someone and Mitch made it crash like he always did. But my big tank sat there and just shot at the Wolfen as they came in, and they ended up at one point one of them charged the Wolfen and drove over them. Like it was very entertaining.
It was
So that's a good retrospective of 8th. Let's spend a few minutes on the other really gross things in 8th. There were lots of them, but
so many.
Castellan and Yannari really cover the
Mhm.
pinnacle of what was terrible. Noah says 6 Dread Knights was also a great way to spend a tournament. I think that's probably fair.
Yeah.
We were talking about our games with the dance party earlier, Noah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know if Noah was here or not. Okay, we are over time, and I actually I don't have a lot of time here, but why don't you guys each talk a bit about 7th so that people will remember why 8th is better than 7th, so we don't have this 7th was the best edition BS going on.
Invisibility.
All right, you go first, Mitch. Tell us about invisibility.
Imagine if you could just cast a power, and it's not hard to get a hold of this power, and then all of a sudden, no matter what, you always only hit that unit on 6s. Done.
Yeah, and then also you only hit things that are flying on 6s.
Yep.
So it's impossible to make entire armies of things that you only hit on 6s.
Mm-hmm.
Did that
Real
push
quick.
everyone to close combat? Is that what that did?
So I think I'll go over my list.
Mhm.
You buy, I think it's 20 Flesh Hounds as a unit.
Mhm.
You put a whole bunch of Chaos characters on bikes in those Flesh Hounds. And then you have a bunch of Demon Princes and Lords of Change and Kuros Fate Weaver
Yes, always.
that are all flying. And that gives you the invisibility. That gives you, I believe, a 3-up invuln on the unit.
Mhm.
So when you do hit
5
on a
up, feel
6,
no pain. Don't
and then a
forget.
feel no pain. So basically invincible to any amount of shooting or anything in the game. And you just drive that around the table, destroying your opponent. There's no tactical anything in that army. It just, hopefully you don't get wrecked. Like, people were either playing that or something that would try to alpha you so hard before your buffs are up that you couldn't actually function after that. But I've had people alpha me and get me down to like 2 Flesh Hounds and been like, fine. Everybody joins up. We're invisible. I'm perfectly fine.
Yep. Yeah. So I have 2 lists that I'll talk about that both reflected very different issues with 7th. But so my Death Star list was based around the Iron Hands. He was known as Chapter Master Smashfucker. That was the meta term for him. He was a chapter master on bike with a lightning claw, a hammer, and the Gorgon's chain relic, and a bunch of other stuff. And then you had an apothecary and all this, and a whole unit of his veterans on bikes with storm shields and grav guns guarding him. The save you ended up with was a 2-up armor save, a 3-up invulnerable save, followed up by a 2-up feel no pain. And I could make him invisible. Like, I had 3 of the what is it? The Taunar is the big suit, the super heavy when it first came out.
Yeah.
3 of those shot at that guy and did nothing. And
Yep.
the guy's like, I quit. I am done. I don't want to play against this.
Yeah, right.
Why would you? So that's the Death Star grossness. The other side was formations. Which I played the Space Wolf, the Ragnar Black Mains, which is you got free drop pods for all these units you took. But wait, there's more. You also, anytime a unit from the Black Mains detachment was charged in the charge phase, any of your units within 12 of that unit could also try and charge into that combat. So like you like set up, it was kind of like Ynnari where you just set off this chain reaction and they'd like clump to you like magnets. And so I ran that, and it was a total of 14 drop pods. I dropped 12 of them usually turn one.
Yeah. So if you went second against that, you didn't leave your deployment zone because there's literally a wall.
Yep. Well, and also like there was nothing you could do. There was nothing to shoot. I just null deployed every time. It was an army designed to null deploy. So enjoy your first turn. Have fun with that. It doesn't matter if I go first or not.
Yeah.
Don't forget, I've got an Inquisitor in here that makes it so that I have a +1 to my C's and I re-roll my C's because that's good math. That's how that should be decided.
We've touched on the ally matrix here a little bit, but we should touch into that as well.
Yeah.
I think when you take a special character Riptide and join it to another Riptide to create a unit, and then you join in a Farseer to that detachment, that unit, and then you add a chapter master to that unit. And the Farseer is a good source of invisibility. And that just rolls around the table, blasting everything it can. And you still have a healthy amount of Tau for an army up behind that, right? Like there's so much of that kind of thing. And I think what we're trying to hit here is 7th edition was the edition of how many buffs can I stack and make something
How
invincible.
Invincible are you?
Yeah. And then the people go, okay, well then what can I do that can beat your invincible thing, but also then be invincible? And it was just trace busta over and over and over again the entire edition.
There also
I
was
watched
no
the battle
support
report
from GW, and the only way the edition was playable was because Frontline was putting out a comped rule set.
I do believe that Frontline was definitely the saviors of that period of time because they also were giving us missions that were worth playing.
Yep.
Like they did a lot for the community in that period of time. They've done a lot community in a lot of places, but like they particularly shined, I think.
Yeah. So I watched some battle reports before getting into 8th edition because I was trying to learn what units were. There were entire armies existed that didn't exist when I played before.
Yeah.
So I was trying to learn about them, even though the rules weren't the same. And I watched a battle report where there was a Demon Prince traveling by himself with a 2-up rerollable invul.
That sounds right.
And I don't think that can I don't think that those two things can exist in the same reality. 7th edition is the best edition of 40k. This Demon Prince has a 2-up rerollable invul. I don't think that those two things are Venn diagrams. I think they just bounce off of each other. I don't think there's any overlap in that Venn diagram.
So
Well,
let's
go ahead. I was just saying, what's really important about that is they've misplaced their buffs. That Prince isn't strong enough to be receiving the buffs that are necessary to make that happen. It should be on a better unit.
Yeah. So let's talk about a few of the other like mechanical things that made 7th a lot more difficult. Templates, scatter dice. Right.
Oh, yeah.
You had entire game mechanics that were like that could look very subjective. And were very difficult to like, oh well, I think it's going this way, like, oh, that's 7 inches.
Oops, I rolled the die too far away from where it's actually scattering. Now we can't tell what direction the arrow is pointing.
Yeah. So there's a lot of things that are like mechanically. Let's talk about armor class with facings. Let's talk about immobilized, explosion chart. Like were so many more rules. So many. However, there is one thing from 7th edition that I love that is coming back, and it's universal special rules. That's it.
Okay.
That's the one thing I'm happy.
Any final thoughts about 7th, Chuck? Because I think we've made it clear that we do not think it was the best edition of 40k.
Towards the end of 7th, I was playing, and the only reason I would enjoy it is if I was winning. That was a huge life lesson for me. And then when 8th came and the game became playable, I got worse. My scores definitely dropped going into 8th. To continue in 9th, I'm not as good at the table as I am at list creation. And I am enjoying the game incredibly more.
Yeah.
I miss Grey Knights, like playing Grey Knights back then, where you had the Force keyword, so you had instant death, and it's like, do you have the keyword Eternal Warrior? No, I'm sorry.
Goodbye.
Yeah. Oh, you have a 2-up rerollable save. I'm gonna make you do 20 saves. Just fail one. Just one. You're dead.
All right, guys. That was great. I hope you guys enjoyed our look back at the previous several editions. Someday, Chuck and I will talk about 3rd edition and 2nd edition 40k, but that's not today. we are excited, and I hope you guys are as well. You know,
Yeah.
I think that it's become obvious that the Best in Tabletop Network is about positivity and good humanness, and this is going to be the place for hype. We're not going to do shows where we're trashing it and just complaining about it, like unless there's a really good thing to talk about, and even then we'll be pragmatic. So if you guys want to be hype about 10th edition, we're the place to be. We are going to be extremely excited. The speed at which I will learn and want to talk about lists will be alarming. I will take over entire Discord channels for days at a time. So if you are interested in that, come find us on our Discord. You can get there through our YouTube or through patreon.com/bestintabletop. But yeah, we're going to be all in. It's going to be extremely exciting. Charity Hammer will be 10th edition. I'm relatively sure WTC will be. I'm wondering if ATC will be 10th edition. So we got a lot to figure out here over the next little while. And while that's happening, make sure to join us on This Week in 40K every Tuesday. Or watch TNG later today. Like, we're making lots of great content for you guys. And we just love it. So
Bit reps.
what's that?
Bit reps.
No, we don't really do bit reps. Bit reps are a few and far between thing. We make bit reps sometimes, and then we put them up, and they're great. But they're once every several weeks, and my inability to play right now is really in the way of that. But they're great nonetheless. So, by the way, I'll just say there's a best overall show coming. We're working on it. We're getting feedback from other members of the network. We're designing it. We have hosts. You guys are going to be hype about who the hosts are, but it's going to be a show that's about sportsmanship, hobby, and winning. And we're really excited about that show. And it should debut in the next few weeks. So, and by the way, I'm not on that one. Just some of you might think, why is Colin on every show? That's because Colin enjoys being on shows, but I'm not on that one. So new people for you. Two new hosts that aren't on the network currently. And with that, I think we're done for this week. Any final thoughts from you guys?
Just excitement, ready to go.
Yeah.
I wish I could have the rules right now.
Yeah, just let me know. Like, give me Lehman Russ. Give me Lehman Russ. Just
Nah.
give me Lehman Russ.
Do the month-long thing that they did for 8th edition, where they gave us new rules every day to talk about.
Yeah.
Do that so I can just live in my Discord for a month and just be so happy while I'm supposed to be paying attention to work. And with that, we're done for this week. Thank you, or for this show this week. For this week's show. Anywho, thanks, Chuck. Thanks, Mitch. Guys, we love you. We're going to keep doing it. Lots more episodes to come. They're Chuck and Mitch. I'm Colin because someone has to be, and we'll be back in just several weeks. Bye, everybody. We're out.
See y'all later.
See ya.
Have a good day.
Play games. It's fun.
Mm-hmm.